I feel like every time I openly criticize a movie on the internet, I rewatch it a couple months later and end up loving it. Anyway, today we're reviewing 5 movies in one video, so if you have any alcohol, I suggest you bring it out now, because bar the first movie, these movies get not great. So Scream, it's a 90s slasher by Wes Craven, one of my favourite directors ever, but truth to be told, when I first watched Scream, I didn't like it that much. It actually took me quite a while to warm up to this movie, but now I realise that some of my criticisms were very flawed, and I do really love the first movie now. So in preparation for Scream 6 coming out on the 10th of March, I think, I've decided that I will review every single Scream movie in one video. As of recording this, I've only just watched Scream 5 today actually, so fresh opinions on this, and I rewatched them all over the space of the last 3 days or so. So let's get into this sucker as we tackle Scream. The original Scream, by nowadays standard, is possibly the most recognizable slasher movie to the general audience. It's unbelievable how big of a deal this movie was when it came out. I don't know if it's one of my favorite horror movies necessarily, but it's definitely my favorite 90s horror movie, probably excluding Child's Play 2. Hype was quickly built around this movie being directed by Wes Craven, who was already a huge name in horror. Of course, being known for things like A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Hills Have Eyes, The Last House on the Left, and he continued to make great movies after this, like Red Eye, until his eventual passing in 2015. You see, in the mid-90s, slasher movies were dying. I mean, we had some good ones like Candyman and Tremors, but then you also had shit like Leprechaun. Slashers were becoming a joke. So Craven looked at this and decided to make a movie that both speaks to audiences who are tired of these slasher tropes and sympathizes with them, while also trying to restore that classic slasher feeling. It took slashers back to their root, while also introducing a real neat little Scooby-Doo whodunit vibe. I loved the first Scream movie, and I think maybe why I didn't like it as much before is that I wasn't really understanding where it was coming from. I got that it was poking fun at slashers, but I kinda thought it just ended up feeling like another plain old slasher, but I don't really see it as that anymore. It actually gets its message across pretty damn well. I previously criticized the characters, and while I still think the twist reveal was kinda predictable, I've really come around to the characters, including the villain. Sydney is honestly one of the best final girls. I also really like Tatum, I like Randy, Dewey's a great comic relief, as well as Stu of course. And while Gale Weathers I don't think is great in this movie, gets really good by the sequels. Oh, and I guess I should probably say spoilers from here on out because, yeah, this is a very old movie, but once we get to like Scream 5, obviously that came out like last year, so you might want to be wary of that. Despite what I thought before, Billy is a good villain, despite being a bit predictable in my eyes. But the whole last scene with Billy and Stu is really well paced and really well shot. Oh, and I can't even begin to talk about how great the opening scene is. It has it all. The meta humor, which isn't so prominent that it's annoying yet. It's also actually kind of scary. Like, oh my god, when she sees Steve on the patio, you can feel the fear in her voice. Casey Becker is played perfectly by Drew Barrymore, who as of lately has become one of my top actresses. In fact, I'm going to say that all the actors do a pretty fantastic job, which might change a little bit in the sequels, but honestly this movie's aged really well, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. Scream 2 is good? Yeah, really weird feelings about this one. I think I like it. It's got pretty good pacing. The characters are still good, although the new characters are meh. Honestly, my favorite character in this is Gale. She feels so much more human in this one. I also really like how they keep up the whodunit mystery of the original, but the ghost face in this one isn't my favorite. And man, fuck Cotton Weary. He's my least favorite character in the entire franchise. He was established kinda in the first one, but didn't actually have any lines. But who knew that he actually plays quite a big role in the second movie, and he's also miserable as fuck to watch. They do a little bit of a Mrs. Voorhees with Billy's mum, and while this was foreshadowed earlier by the mention of Mrs. Voorhees, it doesn't really do it for me 100%, but it's not the worst thing in the world. What I really hate is the original Ghostface reveal. It's basically this rando who was in like 2 scenes before.
Shit, it's a white guy!
I even had to Google his name before writing this. It's Mickey apparently. Just because you're played by Timothy Olyphant doesn't mean I'm gonna let you off scot-free, Mickey. So this is a very character-driven movie, I guess you could say. A lot of it is just the characters hanging out, which on one side is good because we get to flesh out the new characters, even if they're not great to begin with, but also it's nice to see the old characters in the first movie get better relationships, like Dewey and Gale, who have really good chemistry in this movie. However, this does kind of lead to the Ghostface storyline in this one being kinda lackluster. And I'll say it again, the new characters are not good in this movie. Once again, Mickey, weird choice for a twist villain. Derek, Sydney's new boyfriend, sucks. Cotton Weary, fuck off. But with all this, it's a fairly entertaining watch. It has a few flaws, but it's fairly inoffensive, I guess.
Oh shit, Salvo, it's that TV news shit, Connie fucking Chung. Hey Connie, how's Maury?
Scream 3, also known as the one that has Jay and Silent Bob in it, also known as the smelly one. Yeah, this is not good. And also, hear me out, it's bad, but not because of the voice changer. Yes, the voice changer is stupid. Yes, it makes no sense. Yes, it's unrealistic and cartoonish as all hell. But you know what? I'm honestly kind of okay with it. I can kind of look past it as just a thing that makes Ghostface more of a threat. Yes, it's completely unrealistic, but for me at least, I can just roll with it. The movie's still not good though. So in this movie, they go to Hollywood. And pretty much the whole movie is about a fictional film franchise known as Stab, which is an adaptation of the real events of the first movie, which was in 2 but not nearly as prominent. And basically, the Stab franchise ruins this movie. You see, whenever we cut to the Stab movies, we get a cheesy parody of the previous movie. Now these scenes are a little cringe and really unsubtle. However, it's not as bad as when Scary Movie tried to do it, at least. But yeah, the Stab movies are a big thing in this movie, so naturally, this makes me like the movie less. This one also takes some really weird creative choices, like Sydney's mum as a demon ghost lady, Jay and Silent Bob, the voice changer, Jay and Silent Bob, the Stab franchise, Jay and Silent Bob. Seriously, why are they in this movie? You know what, fuck it. Let's discuss the logistics of this. So Scream must be set in the same universe as Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back has a cameo of Wes Craven himself. So Craven is in the same universe as his own movie franchise. So does that mean Scream is also a movie inside of this universe? Is this the Scream paradox? Okay, let's go further. The Sarah Michelle Gellar paradox. So Scream is in the same canon as Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. It's also in the same canon as Clerks. Now in Clerks 3, in the audition scene, boom, Sarah Michelle Gellar. And who plays Cece in Scream 2? Sarah Michelle frickin' Gellar. Meaning that there are not one, but 2 Sarah Michelle Gellars in the Scream universe.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Sorry, what was I on about? The main word I would use to describe this movie is unsubtle. As I stated before, mainly because of the Stab movies, but also this movie is just goofy compared to the others. It makes the franchise seem so tonally inconsistent. Like, Carrie Fisher has a cameo in this movie, and it's acknowledged that she looks like Carrie Fisher, but isn't her. Like, am I watching a Chucky movie all of a sudden? Hey, wait a second. Carrie Fisher was also in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Oh, whatever. I think the one thing I don't mind about the Stab movies in this one is showing a realistic interpretation of what Sydney would be feeling like about these events being played out in a disrespectful way. Like, there's a really good scene where she finds the set of her old house, and it's really well done. It's actually a really relevant topic thanks to things like The Dharma Show and the rise of true crime content. It's honestly pretty ahead of its time in showing how exploitive these things can be. Oh yeah, and the Ghostface in this movie is a joke. I mean, sure, the fact that it's the director of Stab 3 kinda works for the movie because the movie's about Stab 3, but also they try and force the fact that this is Sydney's long-lost brother. Sorry, but no. Scream 4, also known as the one where Dewey has a cooler mustache. Also known as Scroform. Anyway, Scroform is kind of bad for the first hour, but then out of nowhere in the last 40 minutes, it becomes absolutely awesome. Okay, so the first half is kind of boring. The new characters are honestly pretty good, but it's mostly just the same old routine. A new Stab movie is being made, a killer tries to replicate the first movie, there are these horror movie nerds who are all suspects, there's Jill, Sydney's cousin, who's sort of the new main character. And again, in the first part, she's good, but not great. I did like Kirby quite a bit though, but that first act is really weirdly paced and really not that good. But Jill as a twist Ghostface really worked. I like how her plan isn't perfect, but seeing her almost get away with it, seemingly kill Sydney, and beating herself up to look like a victim, really made me wonder how this movie was actually going to end. And I also kind of like how they managed to make this movie not feel like a cash grab. After Scream 3 basically said this is the end of the franchise, and having the whole end of a trilogy rules, Scream 4 basically says, okay, so here are the rules of a remake. And even if this isn't a remake, it does enough new things to certainly feel like a reboot, but I can't pretend that all is fine and dandy. If anything, I was a little disappointed with the whole movie. I mean, this was supposed to be one of the best Scream movies ever, when it really is just good. It's only the last 40 minutes or so that really saved this movie. Also, visually, this might be the worst looking Scream movie. I mean, the color palette's all weird, and it looks like they smeared Vaseline over the camera lens like it's a 40s movie and they just did a close-up of the main character's wife or something. Also, the Ghostface storyline up until the twist reveal really isn't good. In fact, it's probably the worst one yet. The old characters aren't in this movie as much, and when they are, it's not like they're really at their best. But there's just so much in that last 40 minutes that I really like. All the stuff about the Stabathon. Not just Jill, but both twist Ghostface reveals were really good. The whole sequence in the hospital, it just gets weirdly so much better at the end. But anyway, I have not a lot to say about this movie, probably because a lot of it felt kinda dry. But by the end, this was probably on par, if not a bit better than Scream 2. Scream 5, also known as Lamau Gen Z So Silly, the most dry of all the Scream movies. This is gonna be the shortest part of this entire video because when I watched this movie, I felt nothing. It pokes fun at the requel epidemic, things like Halloween 2018 and Texas Chainsaw 2022 and the new Star Wars movies, hence titling it just Scream. So I guess I'm fine with the title. The new characters are not good. The older characters basically aren't in this one, which I would have been okay with if the new characters were good. The Ghostface reveal in this movie might be the worst one. Billy apparently had a daughter at some point. I guess let's just not talk about that terrible retconning. Dewey had a somewhat unceremonious death. Most of the actors are fine, but this is the most whatever movie in the franchise. And so that was it. If I'm being honest, I don't have loads of hope for Scream 6. Maybe it'll surprise me, maybe not. But it has one of my biggest pet peeves in sequels, which is setting it in New York. I just think that's the most cliche thing you could do. And also, where can they go from here? They've done poking fun at slashers, poking fun at sequels, poking fun at trilogies ending. Fine. They've done poking fun at remakes, which, okay, I'll let you get away with that one. You know, that's a pretty big horror trope that you can cover. Then requels, which, like, I guess they're common enough to warrant this, maybe, especially recently. What can they do now? Sequels to requels? Do we even have many of those besides Halloween Kills? I don't know. But I guess I'll find out soon enough. Let me know if you agreed with my opinions, I guess. Tell me your own opinions if you want. And I guess that'll be all. Goodbye.